Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional shows that I like. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episodes of Sleepy Hollow, Grimm, as well as Second Chance. So let's start off with this week's episode of Sleepy Hollow. We have, while Crane was in the library, looking more at the emblem and, the whole tablet. While he was doing that, the Hidden One appears and attacks him. But before the Hidden One can kill him, the little symbol that he'd been carrying around that he used last episode, because they found out it was actually a good symbol, blocks the attack, and it creates this gigantic barrier around the entire library. So all the entrances as well as the windows are blocked off by this powerful barrier. Abby finds out and tries to get in, but while she's getting in, she runs into Pandora, and Pandora explains everything. That basically the little symbol is known as the emblem of Thora. Basically, it's a emblem meant for the sole purpose of trapping gods. It's what originally trapped the Hidden One in the first place. And so basically, they're trying to find a way to bust into there, because there's no, they can't use normal means of getting in there, so they find an alternative way. It's kind of interesting because this episode's kind of split between, the two witnesses with these two, they're partnered up with other people, Crane's stuck in the library partnered up with the Hidden One, and Abby's on the outside partnered up with Pandora. Some very interesting things go down between Crane as well as the Hidden One. The Hidden One is omnipotent, so he knows all these different things about Crane. He even surprises Crane by telling him all these random facts about Crane when he was a younger boy, stuff he shouldn't know about. And he's like, how do you know that? He's basically he's saying Crane's life was destined way before he was even born. That basically him and Abby as witnesses, it's in their blood. Their paths were always meant to lead them to become witnesses. It's not like they were chosen at random. They were always meant to become witnesses. Which, to me, I mean, maybe I read into it too much. It looked like, it kind of made made Crane a little disheartened. Because to me, it seems like no matter what choices they made, they were always going to end up and be who they are now. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe, like I said, I'm reading it too much into it. A very interesting thing that the Hidden One does, too, is, he starts summoning his power, and basically he summons up all the knowledge from inside of the library and just sucks it into his head at once, because he was Crane was going to look through the books to find a way to break down this barrier, but the Hidden One was that's not going to happen. I kind of skipped over it, but obviously if you've seen the episode, basically the barrier acts as kind of like a backlash. The more the Hidden One struggles, the more powerful the barrier becomes. And I thought it simply would affect them, but maybe I misinterpreted it, but it seems like from what Pandora was saying, it would explode and basically cause mass devastation. But getting back to Abby and Pandora, the only way they could get through the barrier is by channeling the power of her box, but to channel that power, she's going to need a creature. Not really lucky for the victims, but lucky for Abby, there is a Banshee running around. So it's up to Joe, Jenny, and Sophie to capture the Banshee alive. I mean, initially that wasn't the case. They were going to just straight out kill it, but Abby said that they need it, so that Pandora can break down the barrier. A very interesting thing about Banshees, because Banshees are things you see in different, folklore, as well as different, TV shows of the supernatural fantasy variety, right? What I found very interesting is how Banshees work in this series. What they do is they absorb all the sound. Say you're near a Banshee and you're just talking, and you're just all sound in the vicinity of a Banshee is absorbed by them and is sent back at you. That's how they kill you. But, they did almost capture the Banshee, but sadly, Joe had to kill it because it was about to kill Jenny. And I love Sophie's line, because she comes back, she's like, you killed the Banshee? Who's going to tell Mills we killed the Banshee? Not me. So I thought that was kind of... I really, really like Sophie. Just how quick she is just to accept things as they are. And she's just... But, with the Banshee dead, there's no way of getting to Crane and the Hidden One. So... Joe's there, and he, obviously, as we saw from the last episode, the Pandora's box reacts to Joe because of the Wendigo inside of him. And so she looks at Joe, and Joe's kind of looking back at her, and they kind of meet eye to eye, and then they're like, basically, Pandora's like, he knows what needs to be done. And Ginny's like, what are you talking about? He's like, and he suggests, he's like, yeah, the Wendigo inside of me. She needs a creature, so I'm a creature right here. And then Ginny's telling him not to do it because Pandora said, basically, this could work or it could not work. Either it kills him, or if he's lucky, it gets rid of the Wendigo forever. And Joe, basically, he struggled with this whole thing. Like, now that he's discovered it's inside him, he wants to get rid of it. So he, goes along with it, even though Ginny doesn't want him to. In the process, he does kind of lose control, but Ginny was able to bring him back to his human mind, and they continue the ritual. Ginny brings the other piece to Pandora because it's the only way, because the piece that Pandora has is not strong enough on its own. So they use the other piece, and they are able to successfully destroy the barrier. And when the barrier finally goes down, obviously the hidden one quickly vanishes. Crane is a little disappointed because he's like, well, because of that whole incident, the tablets as well as the emblems are destroyed. So there's no way of capturing the hidden one again. But Abby's like, you went up against a god and you survived. Count that as a win. He's like, okay. And at the very end of the episode, we have the hidden one and Pandora, meeting up again. And he's just she's happy because she's like, I got another piece of the box. But the hidden one says, like, there's things we have to talk about. That being certain things she revealed earlier in the episode, that she was the one that gave the emblem of Thora to her people in the first place. That's how he got captured. It was her fault because she gave them the weapon they needed to seal him away because she didn't think her people would do it. And it happened yet again because she didn't tell him about it this time, which granted, I get why. She didn't admit why, but obviously because he's not the same man that she fell in love with, because he kind of just uses her and just tosses her aside. Like even the way he referred to her, I don't even remember the word he used to refer to her, when he was talking to Crane. It's like, you hurt, he was referring to Pandora. I can't remember. Like, he referred to her in a certain word, but it wasn't like, oh, my love or my darling. It's just like, I don't remember, but it wasn't a term of endearment. So Pandora is going to get, there's no telling what he's going to do. I mean, granted, I doubt it's anything pleasant because he's a bit of an asshole. So we just have to wait to see where everything lies next episode. Now moving on to this week's episode of Second Chance. Picks up right where last week's episode left off, with Pritchard and Mary finding out, figuring out that Pritchard isn't the only one that was brought back. They end up confronting Otto. Otto doesn't really say anything. He says to Mary, he's like, everything I did for you. If I did anything, it was to, make sure that you, like, save you. But it's like, Mary is kind of like, she's like, you can't be serious. Like, if you had any connection to Albert Lynn, he killed like 8 people. Those are 8 people, and it's your fault. And basically, Otto's like, we're supposed to look after each other. And Mary's like, what was it she said? She was basically like, she's always had to look after him, and she's essentially, she kind of like, she almost hates him for what he's done. His experiment led to someone dying. And Mary, wanted to take back those words, but Otto kind of shut down. Otto ends up leaving, and he meets up with Connor, and he pulls a gun on Connor because he realizes Connor was the one that, made Albert Lynn. Because apparently, Alexa kept bringing it up, but I never really understood it. They never fully developed when Otto brought them back. They were like newborn. They were not fully developed. So, but he just cast them aside. Connor, using the little bit of his understanding of Otto's research, he ended up, fully growing them. Obviously, it worked out a little bit better for Alexa than it did Albert Lynn. But he puts the gun on him. It's like, it's all your fault the way things are now. And then Connor continues doing what he's doing, and it manipulates Otto, basically saying, it was your sister, she's turned against you and all this stuff, even though he's the one that greased the wheels to push it that way. The slimy son of a gun. I censor myself. Go back. That slimy son of a bitch. I'm just going to say it because he is a son of a bitch. because of Otto being in the situation he is, he decides to take Arthur. And when he takes Arthur, he devastates everything because he has Arthur separate himself from looking glass, which causes all looking glass technology to shut down. Basically, their business is going dark. Basically, all their technology, their phones, their tablets, useless. He also removes Arthur from their home, meaning the tank that Pritchard's in is now useless. Luckily, Mary was able to empty the tank and resuscitate him. But now that Arthur's no longer there, there's no way for Pritchard to continue, going inside a tank. He has maybe a day left. No, he has exactly, not even maybe, definitely a day left. And once that happens, he'll die. There's no coming back this time. Pritchard wants to spend his time with his family. He's not really going to tell them what's happening, but he wants, to spend the time with them. But sadly, Duvall ends up finding out because he gets a video from Gracie basically telling him that she ran away with her boyfriend, which is all cute and adorable until she finds out that basically her boyfriend is basically a giant tool and he's been working for Connor. Like, this was all in the plans to begin with. So it seems like the whole point of him getting together with Gracie was simply so he could take her later on down the road. And it's just like, I always knew I didn't trust that guy. I was like, he seemed too quick to be staying in her life. I feel like any boyfriend being threatened the way he would just left. It's like he stayed around he had to have a reason to constantly be staying around, and it turns out to be what it is. He ends up taking Gracie to Otto. To Otto and Connor. Figuring all this out, Pritchard and Duvall, using a fake warrant that they had Mary type up, they end up, hitting Connor's office. And basically, Duvall busts in there and he keeps asking where Gracie is, and he's not getting an answer. And Duvall's just beat the crap out of him until Duvall's boss shows up and she shuts the whole thing down. And then Duvall, tries to explain everything, even though, because the FBI searched everywhere. They even used dogs that had Gracie scent. She wasn't in the building, and simply because she's on and off. The lab isn't there. It's the lab somewhere else, which I kind of figured that was what it was going to be. I was like, there's no way it's going to work in Duvall's favor. He explains the truth, the whole thing about Pritchard, his CI, is actually his dad. And that basically he tells him, the reason why Gracie got kidnapped is because she has that same gene inside of her, that regeneration gene inside of her, just like his dad does. Obviously, her boss thinks he's crazy, and she's like, give him, basically you're fired or suspended, and basically we're going to send you to a psychiatrist to get examined. We also had George and Alexa. George is he's still pleading to Alexa, do what's right, at least go to Mary. Connor is a sociopath, don't trust him and stuff like that. But Alexa's like, no, we're so close. Basically, to remedy that situation, he kills himself, and not just kills himself. He burns his body. This way, even when he's dead, she won't have a body to use to bring him back. Because he knew the only way that he could stop Alexa from doing all of this, for her to kind of move on and do the right thing, he had to remove himself from the situation. And Alexa does, in fact, do the right thing now that she has basically lost everything. Her whole reason for doing all of this, partly it was to get revenge against Otto, but mainly it was to, have a new life with George, so that they could be together. So she don't have to worry about him dying. They could, he can become young again, and they can, continue kind of where they left off in a way. But George was kind of against it or whatever. He kind of thought of it as a bad thing. It's maybe we should only be given our own lives. But anyway, Alexa goes to Mary and tells her, I know where Gracie is. And at the very end, we see Pritchard, going off to save, track down Gracie. Time is still ticking. Next week is the season finale. I'm crossing my fingers. I really hope this show gets picked up for a second season, because usually these type of things, they're usually decided around the time the season finale airs. In some cases, obviously, it's decided, a couple episodes before. But I really hope this show comes back for a second season, because I really like it. And side note, I didn't talk about it, but obviously, Mary and Pritchard finally kissed. I was like, come on! I was like, yes! I leaped up from my bed. I was sitting on my bed watching it. And I was like, yes! About time. Like I told you last time, I've been looking forward to that relationship, because it's so obvious they like each other. She even said something in, the language between her and Otto, and he's like, what does that mean? She's like, you know what that means. You have an idea of what that means. And then the kiss. I was like, yeah. Okay, sorry. Now moving on to this week's episode of Grimm. Picks up right when last week's episode left off. I know I'm saying that for everything. But we have Nick and everyone, being like, okay, like, what's the deal with this stick? Basically, let's put the stick away until we know exactly what its deal is. Basically, the main part of this episode was mainly about luchadors. It was very, very interesting. I don't really know too much about luchadors. It's stuff I've come across here and there, but nothing too definitive. Basically, you have this kid who basically he's getting paid to lose all of his matches, just so he can bolster his opponent, because his opponent apparently has that kind of charm that brings in a crowd. So it's like, bring him higher and higher just because he wants to. The kid, the kid losing just makes that guy's reputation go higher and higher. The kid eventually the dude, I keep referring to him as a kid, he's probably older than me, just got tired of always losing, and he wants to win. And he talks to the guy who makes luchador masks. He's like, you know what you can do for me? Make me one of these masks. These masks were worn by great luchadors. And he's like, it gave them strength and power. And he's like, are you sure about this? He's like, and the kid's like, yeah, I'm just tired of losing. Basically, this guy he's getting the mask from is a Vesson. And now he makes these masks in a very interesting way. What he does is he cuts the faces off of people, specifically Vesson, and then with a little bit of magic, imbues it with power. It's like a whole ritual. And so that the moment a person puts the mask on, essentially they draw in all of the power of that Vesson. This can work for Vesson. It seemed like it could work for Vesson too, but mainly the point they wanted to get across is like normal people, like Hank, for example. People like Hank who are just normal can wear the mask and gain the power of the Vesson that the mask was made out of, which is it was pretty gross, like, because you actually see when you see a first person perspective when the guy cuts the face off. It was kind of disgusting, and you get to see the body, and you see his face after his face was removed. You saw it's pretty gross. But anyway, the guy goes off and he wins his match, and it kind of gains him some notoriety. Like the guy who's in charge of the match is just like, yo, you're going to be our headliner. Well, this whole mask thing kind of messes with him, because he was warned that you only wear the mask inside a ring. Do not wear it outside of the ring. There will be consequences. Kid didn't listen. And because of that, putting on the mask, it makes you a little more Vesson than it does human, and it makes you very ferocious. And he ended up killing the guy that tried to jump him. And then he he took it off, but he put it on one last time, and it ended up fusing with his head, so he couldn't take the mask off. He went to the guy who made the mask to get it taken off, but he started kind of going a little crazy. The voices, masks start talking. All the masks in the shop start talking to him, telling him, it's like, oh, that guy's just trying to take the mask from you. He's just trying to take your power from you. So he attacks the guy and inadvertently kills him. Nick and Hank show up to stop the kid, but they can't just they can't get the mask off. So they call Rosalie and Monroe. They show up, and Rosalie performs like a little ritual, and by pouring something on the mask, and the mask ends up coming off after she speaks a couple kind of an incantation. And the really sick and twisted part is at the very end, like when the mask kind of came off the dude, it reverted back to a human face, because to make these masks, is best used when the person is vogued. And basically the guy who made the mask paralyzed people so they would stay vogue when he took their faces off. Basically at the end you see the face unvogue and it turns back into like a normal human face, which made it look so twisted. That's pretty much how that case went down. Other things that came up in this episode, Adeline just being adorable. It's just like happy to see Nick. You know, obviously Nick and them haven't said anything about the whole stick situation. Did I just completely skip over that? I think I did. I think I kind of got so caught up in something else. I totally skipped over the stick thing. Basically, they're not telling anyone about the stick. They're keeping it to themselves. I'm probably going to re-edit this and look back and be like, holy crap, I didn't talk about that. But if I didn't, it's here. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. I'm leaving all of this in because that was just stupid. I can't believe I really did that if I did it. If I didn't, it's all getting cut out. But if I did, and I'm going to stop now before I confuse you even more. Whatever. Adeline, being adorable as she is, just hugging Nick like, oh, I missed you and stuff like that. And she brings up the hypothetical. She's like, you know, Nick, what would happen if my powers came at you? He's like, oh, you become a hexen beast again? Because remember, she still hasn't told him, even though Rosalind was like, you should tell Nick, you know, before he finds out any other way. And she's like, yeah, you know. He's like, why would you ask something like that? She's like, well, I'm just thinking about it. She's like, if it happened, like, she's like, I'd be worried that, you know, you'd kick me and Kelly out, or worse, you'd take him and kill me. And then Nick's like, well, truth be told, it could be said to you too that, you know, you'd kill me too. But he's like, no, but you're a different person than who you were. So when the situation comes down, you know, if that situation comes up, we'll deal with it as it comes. It was just like, oh. Adeline's like, you know what? I don't want to talk about this conversation. She's like, you know what? I'm just going to drop this. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I was like, oh, it's like, oh, Adeline. And at the same time, we also have Sean being met up with Eve, because Eve just guess the whole situation was stuck in her head. She ended up rewatching the tape, and she realizes that the redhead, Rachel, you learned her name in this episode, the redhead who was behind the whole assassination, she noticed the same thing Sean did last episode. And she goes asking him about it, but he's, you know, and he wasn't really sure what she was asking him about, but we kind of see that she was trying to get a little more information in the whole situation. Trying to find out, like, because finding out that Sean was brought in by Andrew's people, like wondering, you know, why Sean was so quick to back this guy. And Sean was like, yeah, Andrew was a good guy. And she's like, oh, okay. And basically, we have Sean meeting up with Rachel, and they're talking about the whole thing. And Rachel's like, basically, if Sean wants to win, he has to appear to have a family. Apparently, they know about his daughter Diana, and you know that Adeline's a mother. And he's like, how do you know all this? It's like, who do these people, like, how far does their network of information go? Unbeknownst to Sean, Eve is in the bar too, noticing this whole situation, so she knows Sean is meeting up with them. I guess on some level, Eve feels bad about the whole situation. Like, I guess a little bit of Juliet's coming out because she's remorseful in the situation, because she's like, they could have prevented Andrew dying. It's just, she doesn't understand how it slipped past them. You know, they should have known ahead of time that Andrew was going to be their target, and she regrets that. I mean, she doesn't outright, like, shows that she regrets it, but I think she does. And then at the very end of the episode, we have Sean calling Adeline up about the whole, like, I have a way of getting your daughter back, Diana back, our daughter back specifically. So basically, Adeline's going to have to work together with Sean, because they're going to have to play family if they want to get Diana back, because it's going to be a part of this whole, you know, getting him elected as mayor thing. But it's like, okay, like I said earlier, what's their whole connection like? You know, I thought Diane was kind of off on her own thing. I thought the Resistance had her. So it's like, how does this group have her? Because didn't she, like, wasn't she on a plane with a Resistance member after she basically made the king, like, basically leap out the helicopter? Wasn't that it? Last season? I don't know. And also, what about the whole Nick and Adeline thing? This is going to throw a wrench in that. And it's like, no, Nick and Adeline forever. Like this is going to complicate things, and things are already complicated for Powers coming back. It's like I don't want that relationship to get messed up. Well, maybe it should get messed up for story purposes, just so that they can come back stronger. Fight their adversities just to be together in the end. It's like, oh, you're a Hexen Beast again. It doesn't matter. You're a different person, Adeline. Nick, am going to fight for you. I don't know, something stupid like that. I'm rambling. I'm stopped now. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.